Page 476. Continued appendix of Seth Speaks. You cannot examine reality without examining yourself. In other words, you cannot hold encounters with all that is, or God, apart from yourself, and you cannot separate yourself from your experience. Pause. You cannot use, in parentheses, truth. It cannot be manipulated. Whoever thinks he is manipulating truth is manipulating himself. You are, underlined, you are truth. Then discover yourself. And now I will say good evening. As Seth, Jane slapped her knee, grinning. Okay, Seth, thank you very much. We will still have our own sessions when circumstances allow. All right, good. When this book is finished, I guess. My heartiest regards. The same to you. Thanks. Good night. 11:16 p.m. Gee, I really feel good, Jane said, when she finally came out of another deep trance, but I think I can just about make it to bed. She was yawning again and very relaxed. The soft, pleasant rain continued. ESP class session, Tuesday, June 23rd, 1970. Some 16 members of Jane's ESP class were present when this session was taped. In the session, here slightly abbreviated, Seth discusses organization in our present reality, among others. See the 537th session in Chapter 9 for material on after-death organization. Now, if you want organization, then you shall have it. At any time. You structure your own existence, and you choose those realities that have exactly as much organization as you need at any given time. In this reality, you very nicely emphasize all the similarities which bind you together. You make a pattern of them, and you very nicely ignore all the dissimilarities. Out of a vast field of perception, you choose to focus your attention upon certain specific areas and to ignore all others. And so there is perfect agreement among you as far as this small area is concerned. The vastness that you do not perceive does not bother you at all, and you do not ask questions about it, and yet it exists. I have said this before. If you are able to focus your attention upon the dissimilarities, merely those that you can perceive but do not, then you would be amazed that mankind can form any idea of an organized reality. In parentheses, as Seth, Jane looked at the couch where Mary and Art were sitting. I look now between the two of you. Excuse me, I got a frog here. I look now between the two of you. The others look at our friends here on the fancy blue couch. They see a picture of true organization. There is an individual there, pointing, and an individual there, with space in between. The picture is equalized. It appears perfect and organized. However, the space between our two friends is not vacant. You think of it as vacant because you do not perceive what is there. The picture appears to be very organized as soon as you realize that the picture is not complete, however, then you must begin to ask new questions. And the old idea of the perfect organization is gone. Now, as you know, you do not perceive the atoms and molecules that swim about the room, nor those that fill the space between our two friends, nor the forces, the field forces that exist. The couch serves to unite them, since they sit upon it. And what do they sit upon? Emptiness, that you perceive as solidity. Once when I was on acid, when I was a teenager, I could see the molecules swim about the room and fill the spaces between. I saw the molecules through everything, through my body, through every object in the room. And I knew at that point that everything was made of the same thing. This is just me talking now. This is an experience I had when I was 15. And I was with my best friend, Lori, and we took what we thought was acid. I don't know what it was, mescaline or acid or something, but it definitely altered our minds. And it was a good experience, actually. I had a bad one later, but that was a good one, in which I saw all of the swirling things in and out of everything. Everything was moving. Nothing was solid. You could tell it was just all made up and formed by all this swirling stuff. Atoms, I guess. Anyway, back to the book. That was fun. I'd like to go back to that day, experience that again. Back to Seth. Now, without your particular physical senses, you would not perceive the couch as solid. Consciousness that has different perceptive mechanisms than your own is unaware of our famous blue couch. You make the organization. Your thoughts perceive an organization. You enforce the organization and indeed create it. God, I don't know what. Maybe it's these candles. To Mary and Art, you each generally agree, I am sure, that you sit upon a couch. You do not perceive the same couch. You only perceive your own idea constructions. You cannot see those of another's. Telepathically, you transpose your ideas in line with what you know of the other person's thinking. You agree that the couch is here. Now, it is true that within your physical system, for I know this will come next, that you can measure your couch. I expect at any moment that someone will get a ruler and measure it, and then say to me that the couch is so long. How can I say it is not one couch? However, within your physical system, the instruments themselves are distorted, and of course they will agree with what they measure. There is no reason why they should not. Telepathically, you all agree on the placement of objects and their dimensions. Now, you use atoms and molecules in a strange way. You transpose your ideas upon them. You perceive them in a certain fashion. I am not blaming you. I have done it too in my time, and there is good reason for it. But the fact is that physical matter is not solid except when you believe that it is. And that organization is transposed from within upon the without. It is not transposed from the without upon you. You form the reality that you know. And even though the table holds up your arms and you may lean upon it and write, I still tell you that this table is not solid. This makes little difference as long as you can write upon it. It makes little difference as long as you can sit upon your blue couch. But when you leave your physical system, and when physical perception is no longer the rule, then you must learn new root assumptions. Root assumptions are those laws upon which you agree in any system of reality. You agree, for example, upon what objects are physical. It makes little difference whether they are or not, as long as you agree upon this. Sorry. Your consciousness belongs in a body. You would not be caught dead, in capitals, dead without your consciousness outside of your body. It is taboo. Now, the fact is that your consciousness is not imprisoned within your body. But as long as you believe that it is, again, you will not be caught dead outside of it. And when you are caught dead outside of it, there will be some amazement indeed. There are other root assumptions that you take as a basis of reality. And in other levels of reality, there are other root assumptions. These are the seeming laws by which you govern your experiences. Our note-takers are doing very well, considering that the paper is not solid, and neither are their pens. It is amazing what you can do with nothing. Break and discussion. Seth, you are truly multidimensional personalities, as I have said before. At some point in your development, you will become more and more aware of the true nature of your identity. There is, for example, a part of you who is very aware of the pulsations you have just been discussing, and who is aware of the pulse-like nature of your memory. When the pulse is in this physical reality, then, you, as you know yourselves, have memory of this existence. When the pulse is in another dimension, there is memory of that existence. Now, a portion of your entire identity has memory of both. The entire personality structure dwells in many dimensions, and simultaneously. You are at the very beginning of an idea of psychology. You simply do not realize what you are now. And as I've said before, when you ask me questions about life after death, you automatically transpose, if you will forgive me, this lack of knowledge into the next realm. Therefore, sometimes I am at a loss to answer your questions. You are learning to know yourselves. At the rate you are going, it will take you some time. Now, when you properly understand how to use psychological time, then to some extent you can learn to alter the nature and focus of your consciousness. You can turn it in many directions. You can focus it in other ways, away from the physical reality. This does not mean that you will be left high and dry here. It does mean that you will begin to explore the reality of yourselves and of those other dimensions in which you have your existence. There must be, however, a willingness to admit that there are other dimensions in which you exist. You must also have faith in your physical self, faith that it will be here when you get back, and I assure you that it will. There is, underlined, no other way. And I repeat this, there is no other way of getting first-hand information about other realities except by the exploration and manipulation of your own consciousness. Now, When I speak to you, I very seldom use such words as love, in parentheses, love. I do not tell you that a God is waiting for you on the other side of a golden door. I do not reassure you by telling you that when you are dead, God will be waiting for you in all his majestic mercy, and that will be the end of your responsibility. And so, as I said last evening, in my latest chapter, I offer no hope for the lazy, for they will not find eternal rest. However, through traveling within yourselves, you will discover the unity of your consciousness with other consciousnesses. You will discover the multidimensional love and energy that gives consciousness to all things. This will not lead you to want to rest upon the proverbial blessed bosom. It will instead inspire you to take a better hand in the job of creation. And that feeling of divine presence you will find indeed, and feel indeed, for you will sense it behind the dance of the molecules, and in yourselves and in your neighbors. What so many want is a God who walks down the street and says, "Happy Sunday, I am I. I am I." Let's do that again. What so many want is a God who walks down the street and says, "Happy Sunday, I am I, follow me." But God is hidden craftily in his creations, so that he is what they are, and they are what he is. And in knowing them, you know him. Break in discussion. Now, there are many words for psychological time. I do not mean my method of meditation alone. I do mean subjective activity on your part and exploration. Do you follow me? I am glad. Actually, you are with God now. It is you who do not realize this. You see, you have believed many tales, and symbolically they were very important. As was mentioned earlier, they have their place in your lives and your development, but there are times when you must leave them behind, and you may feel lonesome for a while without them. Question. Excuse me. Then we need those beliefs as part of our development, even though we cast them off later? Question. Yes, even though someone like myself will come along and take off the comfort blankets, for after a while they hamper your development, where earlier they helped you grow. The fact remains, however, you do not have to die to find God. All that is now, and you are a part of all that is now. As I have told you often, you are a spirit now. The avenues for development are open now. You can now set out to explore environments that are not physical if you want to. But I do not see any rush of students at that invisible door. Now, I am going to close our session. But I would like you all to read carefully a copy of what I've said. And now and then, when you have nothing else to do, nothing better to do, then try to sense that lapse in the pulsation of your consciousness. Try to leap that gap. I bid you all a good evening. 11:25 p.m. Wow. That was something. Excuse me, my stupid throat. ESP class session before June 23rd, 1970. This remnant, saved by one of Jane's students, is all that is left from one of the few class sessions that were either lost or not fully recorded. See Chapter 9. True spirituality is a thing of joy and of the earth, and has nothing to do with fake adult dignity. It has nothing to do with long words and sorrowful faces. It has to do with the dance of consciousness that is within you, and with the sense of spiritual adventure that is within your hearts. That is the meaning of spirituality. And as I've told you before, if I could, I would do a merry dance about the room to show you that your vitality is not dependent upon a physical image. It is not dependent upon your youth. It is not dependent upon your body. It rings and it sings through the universe and through your entire personality. It is a sense of joy that makes all creativity probable. So do not think you are being spiritual when you are being long-faced, and do not think you are being spiritual when you berate yourself for your sins. The seasons within your system come and go. The sun falls upon your face, whether you think you are a sinner or a saint. The vitality of the universe is creativity and joy and love. And that is spirituality. And that is what I shall tell the readers of my book. And now, take the break I promised you. Session 558, November 5th, 1970, 9:50 p.m. Thursday. Now this is Rob speaking, taking notes. This excerpt from the session contains Seth's first mention of the speakers and their functions in the reincarnational process, and supplements the speaker data in Chapter 17. The session came about because Ron B. and his wife, Grace, members of ESP class, requested help with a problem involving their family. After winding up some very interesting material concerning that situation, Seth launched into the speaker data at about 11:15. All of us present were surprised. The term speaker, in parentheses, as Seth uses it, was unknown to Jane and me, then as it was to Ron and his family. Okay, here's Seth now. Now, we have known several people who were monks in a previous existence. Now, to Ron. In a life in the East, before the time of Christ, 1200 BC, you were a member of a body of men who belonged to an esoteric heritage. You were wanderers and traveled also through Asia Minor. You carried with you in your heads messages and laws that had been given to one of your kind in a time that was already nearly forgotten. These were codes of ethics. They originated from the time of Atlantis. Before that, these codes were given by a race from another star. This race had to do with the origin of Atlantis. The messages were put into words and language and written down at the time of Atlantis, but after that, they were handed down by word of mouth. Your people learned them from their elders, and they were called speakers. You were a speaker. This is why you find it so easy to call others your brothers. Now, 3 men in particular who are under you in the manufacturing plant where Ron holds a supervisor's position, were part of that original band of men. Your wife, your daughter-in-law, and your son, all present this evening, were also members of that band. Your wife and your daughter-in-law, however, were brothers. Now give us a moment here, pause. You traveled through Asia Minor in a time of great turmoil, and wherever you went you spoke, which means you gave utterance to the ethics. It took you 12 years of training to memorize this code of ethics. Now, later, the Essenes were involved. I am not sure of the word. And now Rob is speaking. The Essenes were one of the 4 known Jewish sects active in the Holy Land at the time of Christ. They were a peaceful, contemplative group. They aren't mentioned in the Bible. If Seth means that the Essenes were promulgating the speaker's codes of ethics in, say, the 1st century A.D., then this, of course, is a time many centuries later than Ron's life in 1200 B.C. Ron's wife, Grace, says, Seth, did we fulfill our purposes in that time? Here is Seth. In that existence, yes, you must give me time. There was turmoil within the group, disagreement. There was disagreement over the meaning of the words that were recalled. The group became divided. One portion of the group traveled to the land we now call Palestine, and the other migrated in the next century, appearing in southern Europe. There was a major distortion having to do with B spelled out, B-A-E-L spelled. There was a major distortion having to do with Baal. A group gathered together with Baal as their idea of God. You, Ron, were with the other group. There was a city in a jungle, Messini, M-E-S-S-I-N-I, spelled. As nearly as I can translate it, in Asia Minor and fragments of a past civilization were then there. A new city was built, which in its turn also disappeared. There were writings on rocks, however, as the old messages were once again put into written symbols. But your people were gone, and you are only now finding them again. 11:27. Jane's trance had been very good. This is Rob speaking. She had trouble opening her eyes, then in keeping them open. She had seen images while giving the material, she said, but couldn't describe them to us now. 10 sessions after this one, Seth told Jane and me that we had been speakers also, although he had said nothing about dates or countries, or whether Jane, Ron, or I might be renewing acquaintances made in other perhaps very ancient times. It seems to me that in this life at least, Ron and I encountered each other in quite a strange way. Almost of an age, we grew up in the same small town near Elmira many years ago. We knew of each other's family, and yet we didn't meet until 1970. Possibly reflecting his early speaker practices, which may be continuing on subjective levels, Ron is active in lay church work and knows much about the Bible and related subjects. He elaborated upon some of Seth's data later, and I checked portions through various reference works. Jane, since she knows practically nothing about the historical periods in question, was very pleased that Seth's data was so evocative. Seth Jane spelled the god's name B-A-E-L. Baal. Most sources spell it B-A-A-L, possibly pronounced as Baal. I don't know. Here's another word I've never heard of. The Akkadian, I guess, A-K-K-A-D-I-A-N. The Akkadian form, Bel, was used in ancient Mesopotamia. Baal, Lord, was the name or title of a number of local deities of ancient Semitic peoples. Baal worship appeared in Syria and Israel many centuries before the birth of Christ, as early as 1400 BC, according to Syrian cuneiform texts. This date was very interesting in light of the 1200 BC Seth mentions for Ron and the conflict within his group over Baal. Baal was most often a god of fertility, its image of stone, probably a phallic one. According to Orthodox Israelite belief, Baal, or nature worship, was idolatrous, a denial of any moral values. While we were talking about the city of Messene, about which none of us knew anything, Seth returned briefly. Now, this is write down R-A-M-A, spelled. It is another city. Give us a moment, and then we will indeed say good evening. Ramah is the name of several Palestinian towns and means height in Hebrew. Biblical allusions associate the name with some of the high places of cultic practice. These sites, rejected as immoral and threatening to Israelite belief, contained objects of illegitimate worship, the sacred pillar of Baal being one such. I discovered all of this information through research after the session. None of it was known to us at the time. Resume at 11:48. Now it's Seth again. In your terms, and in your terms only, underlined. The coming of Christ was the second coming. Pause. In those terms. And again, this is important. In those terms only, he appeared at the time of Atlantis, but the records were destroyed and forgotten, except in the memory of a few who survived. Now, again, in those terms, he is an entity who appears time and time again within your physical system. But he has been recognized on only 2 occasions, once in Atlantis and once in the Christ story, as it has come down to you in all of its distortions. He appears and reappears, therefore, sometimes making himself known and sometimes not. He was not one personality, as I've told you, but a highly developed entity, sometimes appearing as a fragment of himself. In your terms, he eternally weaves himself within the fabric of your time and space, born again and again into the world of flesh, being a part of it, while also independent of it, even as you are, all a part of it, but independent of it. Now, since our little friend over here, Ron's daughter-in-law, Sherry, is worried lest I annoy the neighbors very loudly, I will smile, that I hope is a gentle smile, and bid you a gentle good evening, with what blessings I have to give. End at 11:55 p.m. Jane's trance had been deep, and it took her a while to come out of it. Wow, she said, I feel that energy so strongly now, going through me, carrying me along. After the session, Ron explained the second coming as given in the Bible in Matthew 24. He also told us about Jesus predicting his own death and resurrection several times in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and of the resulting uncertainty and misunderstanding of the disciples. Even after his crucifixion, the risen Jesus wasn't recognized on various occasions. ESP class session, Tuesday, January 5th, 1971. This session followed a class discussion on reincarnation and probabilities. Seth's comments and the students' questions show the give-and-take characteristic of class sessions and demonstrates their scope. I'm going to stop now and leave you in the middle of the ESP class session, Tuesday, January 5th, 1971. Ciao. Thank you. Hope you liked it. Bye.